Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. Before I start, I would like to ask if anyone on today's session does not have PMRS account, please let us know in the chat. We will share the new user registration link so that you can have that sent our way so we can have the account created for you. So today, what we are going to go through in the training is the federal eligibility for project specific, as well as responsible charge process and the resolution process. So we will go through step by step through the entire process, how you will be submitting and what you will need in order to complete these submissions, and along the way, who will get notified and how those notification looks like. We are going to share that as a sample. So we have created the process for this project specific eligibility, which is close to attachment to what you are submitting today. So, but before this process comes to you, what is the precursor, right? So the precursor to federal eligibility assessment process coming your way is the project kickoff meeting. So once the safe route to school TAP grants are announced, district office will reach out to local public agencies that receive grants within 30 to 60 days for project kickoff meeting. So once that happens, that's when division office will initiate the eligibility process. So let me share the workflow, and I'll just go through entire workflow. This is where the division program manager will initiate the process. And then once that's initiated, it will go to NJDOT consultant AECOM to assign the responsible charge qualification process, as well as sending it to LPA for eligibility form completion and submitting. So if there is more than one RC undertaking the federal project, there should be more than one process that will be coming your way, and then you need to submit both the processes for each RC. Once the eligibility form is completed, it will be coming to, again, the consultant review here, as we see, and then we did color code just to distinctly identify the process steps. Again, once the review is done from the consultant, it will come to the district office for review and approval. As this is coming, there is a resolution process that will be spawned. So as we see in the process, anytime if there is a rectangle with the orange color, as we see here, that's a spawn process. So which means it's automatically created. Once the district manager approves, it will go to the division program manager. Once division program manager again reviews and concurs, it will go to local aid director. Once local aid director signs, you will be receiving the notifications. So who will be receiving those notifications on LPA side? Engineer, assistant engineer, RC, clerk, presiding officer, and then AECOM will receive the notification on district side, assistant project manager, division program manager, and district manager will be receiving these notifications. Again, we did put some constraints within the process, like to make sure that before the federal eligibility process is complete, the resolution process must be completed, and also at least one responsible charge qualification process must be completed. So we check those here. There are, so resolution, this is where we are checking if the resolution is completed or not. If not, it will circle back and go to district manager step here. And on the process, we did put a reason in code, which tells exactly why it's coming back to anyone's code. And also here, the FARC completed. So what this means is it's the process is looking to see if there is one responsible charge qualification process has been completed or not. If not, again, this is reverted back. Again, when we go through the process, we will make sure we'll point out each eligibility process, where you can look for the resolution process along with the qualification process, and whether the process that's attached to the eligibility process has completed or not. Again, most of you are familiar on this call what this means, but again, if any within the process, if that is the process current active step, in PMRS, it will be outlined as we are seeing here. For the sake of time, today we actually stage the process here and we pre-fill the form so that individually each section we can go through each field and in different sections and in what is the expectation when this form is submitted. So that's why it's pre-filled. Please keep in mind that when we go live and the process comes to you, it will not be pre-filled. You need to enter the information. So with that said, I am going to turn this over to Frank Inverso from AECOM.
Thank you, Vanaj. All right. I'm going to bring up the Federal Aid Eligibility Assessment Form in PMRS platform that is required for all recipients of federal aid funds, local aid lead. So you'll see, if any of you have worked with this before, it's similar to the old paper forms, but just on the platform. The federal aid eligibility procedures are included here. Now, these are our standard procedures. They cannot be changed. If you have any recommendations that you'd like to suggest based on your experience with local lead federal projects, we'd be happy to take a look at those and get you, the information that you need and include it in the procedures as appropriate. Once we populate this form, the appendices to the procedures will be populated. And I'll show you that once that step is complete. Okay, this is the eligibility assessment form. And the first section is just general information of your local public agency. Typically, the business administrator and or the responsible charge would fill this. The second section would require your coordination with your CFO and accounting folks to provide this information. Your unique entity identifier, which we use now. The second section is a financial audit. So if you've had previous federal projects and you've spent $750,000 within a year, you would check yes here and provide us with your most current audit and indicate if there are any findings in those, any major findings in that audit, and you would need to provide those here. We ask that you provide a link to your most recent audit on your township or municipality website, or if that's not feasible, you could always just drop a file here in the latest audit file section. And the question here again for your accounting folks, do your financial systems comply with all the requirements provided in 2 CFR 200? So they would review that and hopefully check yes to that. Indirect cost rates do not apply to these projects. Organizational charts. There'll be 2 organizational charts that are required for the project. There'll be one for the staff that's actually working on this project, and there'll be another for the overall structure of your municipality. And we need to see invoicing procedures, project award procedures, lines of reporting, and all the information that's required in that org chart. And we'll take those and review them and provide you with any comments. Any samples that we provide you during this process are for guidance purposes only. Your municipality will have to customize those for your specific requirements and meeting federal requirements, and we'll review those. The next section is the project administration section, which requires that you provide the name, title, affiliation, and the persons responsible for the following functions. So for the environmental process, that's going to be supported by NJDOT, Bureau of Environmental Program Resources. The design consultant will provide information for the environmental document, and the responsible charge and municipal employees will also assist with that as necessary. Public outreach is headed up by the designer and the responsible charge and a community relations firm if required, depending on the scope of the job. Plan specifications and estimate review and approval is the responsibility of the design engineer of record, the responsible charge, and your accountant and CFO can look over all the numbers, and your business administrator as appropriate. Advertisement of bids is typically the clerk, business administrator, responsible charge would take care of that step. Bid reviews and analysis need to be performed per federal guidelines, and that's the responsibility of the responsible charge, the design engineer, the CFO, accountant, business administrator, and QPA if appropriate. Award of contract and execution of contract are your higher level municipal officials, mayor, council, business administrator, and again, depending on how your municipality is structured, these names and titles could vary. Right-of-way acquisition is the responsibility of the design engineer to identify any need for actual right-of-way takes and or easements, rights of entries, material storage locations, and that's the responsibility of the design engineer, the attorney who would draft and execute an agreement with the private property owner, and the business administrator. Utility coordination, again, it's the responsibility of the design engineer in coordination with the town to identify all utility relocations that are necessary. Typically, your Department of Public Works folks could help with that as well. So design contract compliance. This is in-house folks at your municipality who would ensure that the design contract is in compliance with all federal regulations and NJDOT requirements. And that is typically the responsible charge, business administrator, internal folks at the municipality. Next is construction contract administration. That'll be similar to design contract compliance, where you're overseeing the construction contract and administering that. And that would be the responsible charge, the business administrator, and QPA, if you have one. Construction inspection. Typically, these projects already are in design. That's why we have construction inspection consultant to be determined, because most of the municipalities do contract for inspection. So that would be any inspection is going to be the responsibility of that firm, along with the responsible charge and business administrator. Approval of material sources is the responsibility of the design engineer, the responsible charge, and the business administrator to ensure that all materials that are designed and are available for the project. Source documentations must be maintained for 7 years in hard copy, and that starts with the CMCI firm taking all the delivery tickets, all the documents created from the project, and storing them along with the responsible charge and someone internal at the municipality to actually store them physically. Buy Build America, to ensuring that all the materials, iron, steel, and anything that is utilized for construction is manufactured in the United States. And that's the responsibility initially of the design engineer with assistance from the municipality responsible charge, QPA, and business administrator. Sampling and testing is the responsibility of the inspection firm, resident engineer and inspectors, along with a testing lab that could be contracted to test any asphalt, concrete material as required. Any contract changes need to go through the town council responsible charge, and business administrator, and then ultimately to NJDOT and Federal Highway. Contract schedule, there's an outline in the procedures that describes how to create and monitor a schedule, and that's the responsibility of the design engineer and the resident engineer and responsible charge to ensure that the schedule is created and monitored appropriately. Disposition of change orders are initiated through a field order form, and they will be approved by the town council and committee, responsible charge, and business administrator, and the inspection team who identifies any changes initially in the field. Design and inspection consultant contract administration is internal responsibility of the municipality to ensure that all the design and inspection consultant contracts are being administered appropriately. Work zone safety is ultimately the responsibility of the inspectors. However, there needs to be support from the municipality police department periodically to ensure that there's no hazards and that the safety is set up per the contract plans and specifications. ADA verification during construction will be initially inspected by the resident engineer, and responsible charge will concur. And if your municipality has a construction official, we would ask that he or she be involved with this process, or someone in a similar capacity that coordinates ADA issues. The next section covers our non-discrimination requirements, Title VI, and civil rights compliance. All of the folks that typically perform these tasks are your human resources folks. If you have an ADA coordinator or any non-discrimination officers or equal, they would be distributed through here as appropriate to satisfy affirmative action program coordination, ESBE compliance, DBE compliance and monitoring, training goals, if any, wage rate compliance to ensure that all of the contractors, subcontractors are being paid in accordance with the wage rates that are set at the beginning of the contract during design, and ADA compliance. So that's the project administration section. The next section covers contract administration, and there's a series of questions here, including consultants and staff augmentation. Do you use consultants to augment staff? Just about all of our municipalities do. That would be a yes. And if so, explain how they will be used, and just some disciplines that we included in here, but you can revise those based on the specific scope of work for your project. LPA inspection description. Describe how you will administer and inspect multiple concurrent construction operations or work activities. The concern here is that if your municipality has 2 or 3 federal aid projects ongoing at the same time, a dedicated design team and inspection team are required to coordinate those jobs, along with a dedicated responsible charge for each project. Traffic control and work zone safety. Describe how you will manage traffic control. And typically this includes language indicating that the plans were designed in accordance with NJDOT and MUTCD standards, and that the responsible charge will confirm that the resident engineer and inspectors do daily checks of traffic. And if necessary, the municipality's police safety officer will help with that task. The next section covers some of the items that are included in the procedures that you need to acknowledge reading and understanding. The first is procurement of professional services, and that you'll certify compliance with the procedures for the method to procure professional services on federal aid projects. Brooks Act compliance, meaning that it needs to be a qualification-based selection where cost cannot be a consideration per federal guidelines. Standard contract templates. If you use a standard contract template, we would need to see that and review it to ensure the language is appropriate for a federal aid project. Consultant monitoring and evaluation. You need to certify that you will indeed monitor the consultant's work and evaluate it at the end of each discipline. For instance, at the end of design, you will prepare a consultant rating form for DOT's historical database. Consultant services, these are some of the activities typically that are utilized for these jobs. There are times where some municipalities, large municipalities, may have some surveying ability, but in this case, we are saying that you would need to contract for all these consultant services. If not, self-performed activities would be listed here. So if you're going to do the inspection internally, you would list that here. The next section requires you to supply us with a sample professional services agreement between the municipality and the consultant, and we review that to ensure that the language is appropriate. Consultant performance rating, I mentioned that. At the end of each discipline, construction, inspection, and design, you would rate the consulting firm and provide that to DOT for their database. We need a sample RFP for construction inspection. As I said, typically these projects do have a designer already. If not, the NJDOT Design Assistance Program will most likely be re-upped next year so that you can utilize that program, and that's a reimbursable program. Proposal rating guides and forms. These are the forms that you use to score the proposals. And again, these are just guides, but typically these are the ones that meet federal guidelines and are comprehensive. You would need to customize those for your specific scope of work and include any, extra environmental items or anything that is, required for the per the scope of work. Any non-standard contract language would need to be included here. And if we review your contract language and find that there's something lacking, we would let you know and we would make those changes. We also need a sample construction contract template that's issued between the municipality and the contractor, when construction begins. And then we also may require a sample RFP for design if you do not have a designer on board initially. The next section covers pay-to-play language, indicating that all advertisements and bid documents must include the following language. Proposals are being solicited through a fair and open process in accordance with NJSA 1944. So any language that you have in your agreements or advertisements that would conflict with this statement need to be identified and provided here for our review. Next section covers project management, whereas the responsible charge in order to receive federal funds must be approved and certified by attending Rutgers-Cate training for responsible charge every 3 years. So you'll understand and certify that a full-time employee in responsible charge will manage each project, and that they will comply with the requirements of the responsible charge that are outlined in the federal aid procedures, and that the roles and responsibilities which are outlined in procedures are also adhered to here. Next section covers construction inspection. You'll need to certify that you will comply with the adopted procedures with regard to construction inspection, and that each and every inspector, from the resident engineer and his inspectors, need to have Rutgers Highway-Cate inspection training in order to inspect federal aid highway projects. Source documentation needs to be maintained, gathered for 7 years. You're agreeing to that. Buy Build America, you're agreeing to ensure that all the material that's designed and utilized for the construction of the job will be manufactured in the United States. Contract changes are outlined in the procedures. You're agreeing to follow the procedures that govern the resolution of any contract changes. And there's a sample field order form that is filled out by the inspector and responsible charge that preempts a field order form. So this helps to expedite the process of a change order by getting this out there immediately that there's a change in the project. The next section covers our non-discrimination and DBE compliance. We need to ensure that you maintain a Title VI non-discrimination policy statement. We have all the current language that you would need. in order to prepare that letter for signature from someone in signatory authority at the municipality. And this is where you attach that copy here. And you're also agreeing that if there are DBE goals, you make a good faith effort to meet all those goals and monitor those goals as the contract progresses. Contract time, you're agreeing to utilize the procedures to create your schedules, monitor your schedules, and ensure that they meet all of the federal requirements. Liquidated damages, if the contract construction is delayed due to the fault of the contractor, they may be assessed monetary liquidated damages, and those are included in the standard specifications. The project schedule, you are certifying that you will need to establish a schedule for construction projects in accordance with the specifications and the federal aid procedures. You will monitor those schedules accordance with the procedures, and you will ensure that they are being adhered to. If not, recovery plans will need to be created. Disposition of change orders. As I mentioned previously, we have our field order form, which preempts a change order. If there's any changes in the field, extra material that's required, any unforeseen condition that's justifiable for inclusion and consistent with the scope of the job, this field order form would help to begin this process and complete it per federal regulations. Right-of-way acquisition. If there is a need for any right-of-way, the municipality will have to create a set of acquisition procedures for our review. They need to be consistent with the Uniform Act. Most of the times there's no right-of-way. However, if there is, you will have to provide us with the procedure for acquiring that right-of-way. The next section covers the federal aid experience of your municipality. We'd like to see any federal aid projects that you have worked on and the name of the project, the project number, the responsible charge name, and the authorization date. And if there's multiple projects that you'd like to include to show that you have indeed managed federal aid projects, there's a template that's an Excel template. You could fill that out and then import it into this field here. If not, you could just type the projects in here and click add, and they will populate above. So, like I said, I'm acting as the municipality responsible charge right now. So I filled this all out. And when you do it, you would get down to the bottom here, and the only option here is to submit. So once I submit this, it will move forward in the progress to the local aid consultant for our review and recommendation for approval or return for revisions. So I'm going to head and take that action, and then I'll walk you through the responsible charge form. It's the responsible charge qualification form. And again, the first section just requires that you provide your information relative to the responsible charge candidate. And there's a few questions here that you'll need to answer. Your employment classification, are you presently a public employee? Yes. Employment type, are you full-time? The responsible charge qualifications require that you are a full-time employee working more than 32 hours a week. That would help to satisfy that section. Employment history. This section is a safeguard to ensure that you did not work for any firm or company or anyone that has anything to do with the project's design inspection. So you would need to certify that. If it was yes, you would need to provide that information here. The training section, any training courses attended at Rutgers-Cate need to be noted here. Responsible charge training is required, as I mentioned, every 3 years. We would need to obtain your certificate obtained from Rutgers-Cate upon completion. Need to provide the date of that training and the location of the training. Any other training that you've had, ADA compliance, highway inspection, or any of these, you would note and include the certificate and the date and location of the training. The next section requires that you certify you will attend Rutgers K training every 3 years to maintain your status as responsible charge. And the next section requires that you provide projects that you have administered as a responsible charge. And again, the importing method is the same as above, where you provide those projects. You could download the template, fill it out, import it, or you could fill it out manually here. The next section covers your history not as an RC, however, working on a federal project. So that could be any like FEMA project, safety project, whatever. But if you were not a responsible charge, you would provide that information here for that project. And then again, you could type it in manually. Any other project history? Have you been involved in administering a federal aid project other than transportation related? That would be provided here. The next section, non-compliant project history. If you've ever been the responsible charge of a project that was found non-compliant, you would note that here. And typically that is not standard. And these are some of the definitions of a public employee and responsible charge, and some of the duties of the responsible charge. However, there's a much more comprehensive list that is noted in the procedures, the federal aid procedures, that you will agree to follow throughout the design and construction of this federal aid contract. So once this is all filled out, you as the responsible charge would submit it or sign it. I'm sorry. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh, and as you go through, make sure you save all your information as you work through the form, just to ensure that you don't lose all that time you spent populating the form. Okay, now as the LA consultant, I would go into the FAEA form and perform our review. Make sure that everything with a red asterisk is included. Go through, if there's any comments, they would be typed in here. If you have a responsible charge who certification has expired, we could do a conditional approval for the project pending training, and we would note that here. In this case, we're going to say NA. And then the action I will take here is I'm going to submit this as the responsible charge. And then it's moving forward to the next step. You could always see where it is in the process here. And I've moved the FAEA is moving. Okay. And then signed administrative procedures. So I would go back in to the FAEA form and just ensure everything is correct. And that spawns the resolution. So now the resolution is spawned. And it is now in the local aid district office step. And now I will do the same for the responsible charge. It's in the LA consultant review step, which is us. I would go into here, review your responsible charge application. Sure everything's correct. I would approve that, and that'll be forwarded to NJDOT for their review and approval. Once I do that, this should be moved over to the LA District Office or the LA Project Manager for review. Thanks,
Good
Dave.
afternoon, everyone. So if you can see my screen here, we have the three processes. We have the responsible charge process, the resolution, and then the eligibility assessment. The eligibility assessment is currently in the local aid district office court for the assistant project managers and the project managers. And I'm going to go to the workflow really quick just to show something. So here, we're currently in this step, but as you can see, we have two conditional sets up. One conditional checks to see if the resolution process has been completed, and the other one checks to see if there is at least one valid responsible charge process that has been completed on this project. So to fully complete the eligibility assessment, those two processes need to be completed. So with that in mind, I'm going to go back and firstly, we're going to look at the resolution process. So let me refresh one more time, and we will go to the resolution. Now, for sake of time, we have staged the resolution process a few steps ahead, but I will go to the workflow just to show where it has been. So firstly, after the consultant submits the eligibility assessment to or court here at local aid, the resolution will be initiated. And then from there, we go to the LPA resolution court where there are a few items that aren't required but can be submitted there before the process is moved forward. Then it'll be moved to the presiding officer sign step, where the presiding officer, by taking that signed action, their signature will be captured. And as Vanja mentioned earlier, in these workflows, any step outlined as blue is where we currently are. And you can see we are currently in the clerk step, so we will resume from there. So here in the clerk step, we could see a few fields that are required. Again, any field or any area with the red asterisk is a required field. So we see that the clerk here, they'll be required to enter the resolution number, the resolution adoption date, the approved proof of resolution, and this is a file drop field where they'll be able to drop that supporting documentation. And then also they will have to enter in the presiding officer title. Now, this is left open because it could be maybe a mayor or a borough administrator, and we just wanted to give that flexibility so they could enter in that proper title for that role. And as we could see, that presiding officer's signature was captured here when they took action on that step. And here the clerk's signature is currently empty because I have not taken action yet. But I here either have the ability to revise the step if any information needs to be changed from the presiding officer, but as the information is correct now, I'm going to take the signed action and my signature will be captured. So let me do that. All right. Once the clerk takes the signed action, the process will then move to the assistant project manager's review step, and that is in our court here at local aid. So here, this is simply a read-only step where the assistant project manager will be able to review, ensure that the resolution is correct, that all the information has been entered correctly, and that we've received the correct files. And seeing that everything is correct here, I will move it forward. Again, there is the option to revise if that is needed, but as all information appears correct right now, I will take the reviewed action to move it forward to the local aid project manager. Now that it is in the project manager's court, let me open this up. We can see again, this is just one last overall review step, just to ensure that all the signatures have been captured correctly, all the information has been entered correctly to our specification, and if all that is correct, we can simply take the approved action and that will close out and complete the resolution process. So I will do that. All right, now we can see that the resolution, it is in the closed status and in the finished step, meaning that the resolution is complete. That will let us get past that first conditional in the eligibility assessment, but there is still the second one that requires at least one responsible charge process to be complete. So I will go there now. As we can see, the consultant, before sending it to our court at local aid, it'll go back to the LPA PM review step just for a final review, just to ensure that all their documents have been entered correctly. So once that review happens, they will then submit it to local aid's court. So quickly, you could see it's just a review step. There are no editable fields. And upon taking the submit action, this will now move into local aid's court. So I will take that action. All right. It is now with the district office review step with the assistant project manager and project manager for local aid. So here, again, It is another review step where we just ensure all the responsible charge information has been entered to our specifications and correctly, just ensuring everything's there. If any revisions are needed, we have that built in that we can revise it back to the LPA or the consultant. And here we have any recommendations that if there was a revision necessary, we would put that information there so that the person would know what items to change or add. But as there will not be any revisions right now, I will simply put no comment. And I will take the reviewed action to move this forward. Now the process is with the local aid division program manager, where again, it is another review step just to ensure that everything has been entered correctly and to sign off as this role on the process. So again, there are no editable fields. Here we can see the recommendations that the assistant project manager and project manager would have placed if there were any, as there is no comment. This one is good to move forward. So I will take the concur step and we will close out this process. All right. Now the responsible charge process has been closed, and now that we have both of these processes closed, we can fully go through and complete the eligibility assessment process. So I will open that up now and we will continue with it. Again, it is currently with the district office where this is a review step where all the information can be seen just to ensure that everything has been entered correctly into our specifications. And again, there's no editable fields. It is simply a review. If there are any additional comments, this isn't a required field, but these comments can be placed in here if we need to revise. Again, I'll put no comment. And you can see here all the previous signatures from these steps are being captured. But for now, I will take the reviewed action to move this forward. Now we are at the district manager approval step. This is again simply a review step where there are no editable fields, but it is just for us to be able to review if all the information has been correctly and adequately entered. So I will look through. And seeing that there are no additional comments, I will simply take action to move this forward. From there, it moves on to the local aid division program manager step, which is another review step simply to ensure that all the information has been entered correctly. Now this field, reason for return, if the resolution or the responsible charge process had not been completed, this process would loop in this step. It wouldn't allow me to move forward. And the reason for return would state that either one or the other process had not been completed. But as they have been completed, this field is empty, so that is good. And I will scroll down just to show that again, this is another review step, just ensuring that all the information has been entered correctly. No additional comments for now. So I will take the approved action. From here, the process moves on to our local aid director. Now at this point, it has gone past all the approval steps, and this is simply a step for any final reviews and to simply capture that signature of the local aid director as they sign off on this process. So again, no editable field. I can simply review the information that has been entered or view any comments. And if there is nothing of note, we could simply take the signed action. Now we find ourselves in the final step, which is the notify LPA step. This is the step where the actual notification, the letter will be sent out to whether it be respective the LPAs, AE comms team, or local aid people, just so that they know that this process is completed. Now, there are a few things to note with processes that I want to say before closing this one out. Firstly, we have the Documents tab. With these processes, any documents that have been uploaded are easily able to be seen in this tab here. If you go to the Documents tab, you can see any document that has either been uploaded or generated from this process can be found here. And this is available even if the process is closed. So you can always go back in, and if you need to find any documentation, you can find it there. there is also this attached to section here that shows which other processes are attached to this parent project. Now, we had that responsible charge process that we made and the resolution process. Now, we know that some projects might have more responsible charges than one, as this example. So this is an easy way to see those processes and to note what current step they're in. Here we can see they're both in finished steps, so we can see they're closed out. And also, if you path to the direct process from here, I'll go to the responsible charge. We can see that it shows the current status of the parent project, being that the eligibility assessment here is currently in the notify LPA step. So that is another easy way to track what is the current status of these different processes. So with that said, I'm going to go back to the eligibility assessment, and we can see that this is again just a review step. At this point, once we take the action, that is when the notifications will be sent out. And I believe earlier it was mentioned those notifications are going out to the LPAs, to ACOM's team, and also to our members and our PMs here at Local Aid. So as we can see, there are no required fields, and the only action here is to send the letter to the LPA. So I will take that action. And here I also have a screenshot showing more so what this notification will look like. Now these notifications will be sent through email and they will appear something like this. They will have the project name, what the process is, the current step that it is in that will be finished when this process is closed out, and also the date when that step was in process, when it was taken. So you will know the date when this process was finished and now that this project will be able to move forward. I know I showed the Documents tab in the individual processes, but there's also an overall Documents tab if you want to see any of the documents that have been uploaded to this project as a whole. And you would be able to find those here to the side. So under Documents, and I'll expand this a little bit, under Construction, Local Aid, Federal Eligibility Assessment, and Eligibility Assessment, here we have subdivided all the individual documents that have been either uploaded or generated for this project. We have things like the admin procedures that were generated and the different contract management of the organization charts, all of the documents that were uploaded, you'll be able to see them here. So here's another resource you can use to easily access that data as it is there. But for my part, I will hand this back over to Frank.
Thank you. Once that's complete, you would go back into your main PMRS screen and go to the federal aid eligibility form and note that the federal aid procedures, final procedures, sorry about that. So once that process is complete, you'll have your final set of federal aid procedures that will include all of the appendices from the organizational charts. Let me just get to that section. Here we go. So at the bottom of the procedures, once you get through here, you'll get to the appendix section. Hopefully. Okay. We have our org charts that are populated. Appendix A. We have our sample RFPs. Could be lengthy. And we will then have our proposal scoring sheets. So our Appendix C will be proposal scoring sheets, both for design and for construction management and inspection. Will also be populated with the consultant performance evaluation forms for both design and inspection. It will have the sample field order form that's used to preempt a change order that needs to be filled out by the resident engineer and responsible charge. A sample professional services agreement for each phase. And the signed Title VI policy statement, which is the last of these appendices. And that would be your completed federal aid procedures for which you would obtain your resolution.